When the front door swung open, the ocean wind slipped in first, salt, night air, the hush of waves rolling against the stilts beneath the deck. Then came Mark's laugh, low and careless, followed by the soft click of Sophie's heels. They crossed the threshold like thieves returning to a secret they believed belonged to them. I was already there, not hiding, not crying, sitting exactly where Mark liked to watch the sunrise. Right end of the linen sofa, a gray throw folded neatly over my knees, a stack of manila folders on the coffee table like place settings. Beside me, David, Sophie's husband, sat with his elbows on his thighs, looking at the floor as if he could see the tide through it. He didn't look up when they entered. He didn't need to. The silence was its own kind of siren. Mark stopped mid-step. The key he'd used, my key, was still in the lock. Sophie's hand slid off his arm. For a second, nobody breathed. The beach house seemed to exhale around us. The wrought-tan lampshades, the woven rug, the framed map of the Outer Banks I had picked out on a breezy afternoon when I still believed this place was made of joy. The house remembered. So did I. "Hey," Mark said finally, casual the way fire pretends to be a candle. "Elena, what are you doing here?" There was my name on his tongue, a word that used to mean home. I watched it fall, brittle as seashell. "You're early," he added, as if we had all come to the same dinner by mistake. As if Sophie, sun-kissed, chin tilted, were no more than a misunderstanding in lipstick. Sophie recovered faster. She straightened her blouse, painted composure sliding into place. "We booked the house," she said. "Mark told me." "Mark told you a lot of things," I said, and my voice surprised me. It was steady. It had weight. "Close the door. You're letting the breeze out." Her eyes flashed. She didn't move. David did. He rose, set his jaw, and pushed the door shut. The latch caught with a sound that felt like a verdict. If you freeze the frame there, if you press your thumb on the exact second between his blink and mine, you can almost hear the future cracking open. It's the moment in every story where the narrator leans toward the audience and says, "You're probably wondering how I ended up here. So let me explain," before the shouting starts and the denials spiral like gulls over a trash can. My name is Elena Ward. I'm 34 years old. The woman at my husband's side wore his cologne like a confession. The man at mine once loved her enough to build a life in which this night was impossible until it wasn't. And this house, the cedar-shingled cottage on pilings at Cape Hatteras, all soft blues and sea salt whites, was a promise we paid for with wedding toasts and overtime and every small mercy two people can offer each other when they think forever is a place you can drive to. I didn't come here to beg. I didn't come here to ask why. I came because some stories cannot end quietly, and some people must be shown the map of their betrayal in daylight. The folders on the table contained a cartographer's work, dates, screenshots, itemized charges, 2 hotel invoices in Wilmington and 1 in Charleston, a photograph of my husband's hand on a coffee cup across from Sophie's silver ring, the reflected pair ghosting the cafe window. I had spent 3 months collecting them, not raging, not sleeping much, learning that vengeance, when it is clean, is as precise as any spreadsheet. Mark saw them. He swallowed. I felt the movement like a tide shift in the room. "Elena," he tried again, softer, the way you soothe a skittish animal. "Let's talk outside." "No," I said. "Here's fine." Sophie laughed under her breath, thin, derisive. "This is ridiculous. You can't just ambush us in your house." "Our house," I corrected. "The deed says ours. Would you like to see?" I brought copies. David's voice entered the room for the first time, low and hoarse from holding back. "Sit down, Sophie." She flinched at her own name in that register. For a heartbeat, I saw the girl beneath the poise, a flicker of fear, or maybe recognition. Then it was gone, and the mask was back. Mark's eyes kept moving me. The folders, the door, the bottle of Hatteras Red on the counter I'd opened and poured for David when we arrived. He was looking for exits. He was looking for the version of me he had counted on. The one who absorbed, accommodated, folded her pain like laundry, and put it away. That woman didn't make the trip tonight. Before you say anything, I told him, I want to be very clear about what this is. I lifted the top folder, tapped the string tie against the cardboard. This is not a fight. This is a presentation. He had the nerve to almost smile. Mark, the consultant, the closer, the man who made fortunes look inevitable in boardrooms. A presentation? Agenda. Exhibits. Q&A at the end if you can think of any questions that weren't already answered in your texts. He didn't smile after that. I don't know you, Sophie began, but David's palm met the air in a quiet stop that somehow thundered. Not a word, Soph, he said without looking at her. You've said enough. The house listened. The ocean kept breathing under us. And I did something I hadn't done in weeks. I inhaled without tasting metal. You may think a scene like this begins with rage, that it needs volume, a glass hurled at a wall, the sound of ceramics surrendering to gravity. I won't lie, there were days I wanted that. Nights I stood in our bathroom staring at the mirror woman and imagining Artemis with her bow, Joan with her banner, every furious saint blazing through my mouth. But anger is a bonfire. It crackles, it consumes, it burns itself out. What I had now was colder, cleaner. The ocean at low tide. The knowledge that I could be the weather that remade their shoreline. Sit, I said, because some words still belong to me. Both of you. They obeyed. Mark took the chair opposite me, the one that wobbled unless you shifted your weight to the left. He knew that, he didn't this time. Sophie perched on the arm like she didn't plan to stay long. David stood behind her, a shadow with veins. I opened the folder and laid the first photograph in the middle of a table. A coffee shop window. 2 rings catching November sun. The ghost reflection of a betrayal nobody else noticed at noon on a weekday. Welcome home, I said, and slid the rest of the proof between us like a tide rolling in. Fade to black. Rewind. Before betrayal, there is always beauty. That's the cruelest part. I met Mark Ward when I was 27 at a friend's rooftop birthday party in downtown Charleston. He wasn't the loudest man in the room. He didn't need to be. He had this way of leaning in when you spoke, like every word mattered, like the noise around us faded into backdrop. His eyes caught light the way glass does at the edge of water, and when he laughed, people turned to see what was so good. At the time, I was working long hours as a project manager for a local nonprofit, running on caffeine and the desperate hope of making a difference. Mark was already in consulting, well on his way to a corner office, confident in a world I still felt like I was sneaking into. He asked for my number by handing me his business card with a pen. Write it here, he said like a challenge. And I did. What followed was the kind of romance that makes you forget to doubt. Outdoor dinners by the Battery, flowers delivered to my desk for no reason, Sunday drives with the music turned up and his hand warm on my knee. For the first time in years, I felt not just seen, but celebrated. 6 months later, he asked me to marry him. Not with fireworks or a band. Just him, in our favorite cafe, sliding a small velvet box across the table like it was a secret too precious to say out loud. I said yes. Of course I said yes. We married the next spring, under the oaks at Middleton Place. The air was heavy with jasmine, my dress was simple, his tux crisp, and in every photograph we looked like people who would never know disappointment. The beach house came a year later. Mark called it our sanctuary. A place where it's just us, he told me, brushing my hair back as we signed the papers. It wasn't grand, just a cedar-shingled cottage on stilts, white shutters, and a deck that leaned toward the sea like it was listening. We painted the kitchen ourselves, pale blue, laughing when we spilled more on our clothes than the walls. We hosted barbecues, invited friends to long weekends, and fell asleep to the sound of waves. That house became our story's punctuation mark. Every fight ended there. Every reconciliation was sealed by ocean air. I thought, foolishly, that a place could hold a marriage together the way beams hold a roof. But cracks don't care about paint or promises. It started small. A dinner where Mark was quieter than usual, his phone lighting up under the table with messages he didn't explain. A weekend he said he needed to stay in Charlotte for work obligations while I drove down to the beach alone. I made excuses for him, clients, deadlines, exhaustion. The first real fissure came one Thursday evening when he came home late. I leaned in to kiss him and smelled perfume. Not mine, not familiar, cloying and sharp. He noticed my pause and grinned. "Client dinner," he said. "One of the women at the firm likes to overdo it." I nodded because I wanted to believe him, because the alternative was too dark to touch. But once you notice the hairline cracks, you see them everywhere. His shirt smelled faintly of hotel soap. His explanations grew thinner, patched with sighs and "don't overthink it, Elena." The man who once asked me to sing along to the radio now flinched if I hummed around the house, as though joy itself were too loud. Still, I clung to the beach house. I polished the windows, planted herbs in terracotta pots along the deck, packed coolers for weekends he increasingly canceled. I thought if I kept the sanctuary alive, maybe I could keep us alive too. But sanctuaries cannot survive secrets. And Mark had already begun building his second life. The woman's name was Sophie. I didn't know it yet, but soon I would. And when I did, I would also meet David, her husband, the man who would become my unexpected ally, the man who would be sitting beside me the night the locks turned, and everything came crashing in. If marriage is built on trust, then suspicion is a termite. You don't see it right away. The beams still look solid, the paint still shines, but something hollow echoes beneath. For me, suspicion arrived quietly. Mark began taking his phone everywhere, into the shower, into the garage, even setting it face down when we sat on the couch together. If I asked who texted, he'd shrug. Work, nothing important. He stopped inviting me to firm events, always with a reason. Spouses weren't included. It was last minute. I'd be bored. One Saturday, he claimed he had a conference in Charlotte. I decided to surprise him with a visit, drive up, bring dinner, maybe remind us both what we used to be. But when I called his hotel to leave a message, the receptionist said there was no Mark Ward checked in. I felt the ground tilt under me. That was the first night I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling fan, counting the rotations until morning. When he came home, he smelled of sunscreen, not sweat from meetings, not the stale air of a boardroom. Sunscreen. I didn't ask. Not yet. Instead, I started watching. His receipts, his travel, his patterns. Once, while folding laundry, I found a crumpled parking stub from Wilmington, timestamped the same weekend he said he'd been in Charlotte. Another time, a dry cleaning receipt for a dress I didn't own. The final straw came 3 months later. I borrowed his tablet to check an email while mine was updating. He'd forgotten to log out. The messages weren't hidden, just sitting there, threads of casual intimacy with a contact saved only as S. One message stopped my breath. Next weekend at the beach house. Just us. Can't wait. The Mistress wasn't just anyone. She was Sophie Miller, a woman I'd seen at a few firm gatherings, married herself, always polished, always smiling just a little too long at Mark's jokes. That night, I sat on the bathroom floor, scrolling through their history with numb fingers. Photos, reservations, excuses layered over excuses. When the tears finally came, they weren't loud. They were quiet, the kind that sting your skin more than your throat. But when I looked in the mirror, something shifted. I wasn't just a betrayed wife. I was a strategist staring at proof that would change the game. Sophie was married to David Miller, a financial advisor in Charleston. I remembered shaking his hand once at a gala, his grip steady, his eyes proud as he introduced Sophie. I debated for weeks before contacting him. Was it cruel to pull him into this? Was it my burden to bear alone? But betrayal is never just one person's wound. I arranged a meeting at a quiet cafe by the harbor. When David walked in, he looked like a man carrying too much weight on shoulders built for iron. His eyes scanned until they found me, then softened with wary recognition. "Amelia?" he asked, my name tasting cautious in his mouth. "Yes." My voice shook. "Thank you for coming." I slid the tablet across the table. He scrolled in silence. Once, his jaw tightened. Once, his hand closed into a fist. When he finished, he pushed it back gently, almost reverently, like evidence in court. "How long have you known?" he asked. 3 months. He nodded, staring at the dark surface of his coffee. I suspected. Late nights. Trips that didn't add up. But seeing it, he shook his head. It's different when you see it. We sat in silence a moment, two strangers bound by the same wound. Then he leaned forward. What do you want to do about it? The way he asked, it wasn't broken, it wasn't pleading. It was practical. Like we were discussing investments, not heartbreak. And just like that, an idea sparked. They're planning a weekend at my beach house, I said. They think it's theirs. What if? I let the sentence hang. David's eyes sharpened. What if we're waiting when they arrive? Our gazes locked. Agreement settled between us like a contract signed, without ink. The next 2 weeks felt like preparing for war. David handled logistics, financial records, digging into Sophie's hidden credit lines, freezing joint accounts. I gathered proof. Messages, photos, even recordings of late-night calls Mark tried to take outside, but forgot the patio door amplified sound. We met in secret, never the same place twice. Coffee shops, libraries, even once in the corner of a bookstore where no one looked twice at two people whispering over papers. It wasn't about rage anymore. It was about precision. We agreed on the details. Arrive at the beach house early. I'll lay out the evidence. Confront them together. No shouting, no hysteria, just undeniable truth. Deliver consequences they couldn't escape. Divorce filings already prepared, accounts already moved, reputations already endangered. One night, as we reviewed the plan, David asked, "Are you sure you want to do this face-to-face? You could walk away now. Leave it to the lawyers." I met his eyes. They wanted the beach house to be theirs. Let it be the place their world collapses instead. He nodded. No more questions. You already know how the night began. Mark and Sophie walking in, laughter fading, seeing us waiting. The confrontation lasted hours, though in memory it feels like one long breath held underwater. I laid out the evidence methodically. Receipts, photos, messages. Each time Mark tried to speak, I placed another page in front of him. His excuses withered under the weight of facts. Sophie tried denial first, then outrage, then silence. David spoke only once, and it was enough. He pulled a folder from his bag and slid it toward her. Inside were bank statements showing joint funds drained, properties retitled, her access cut off. While you were busy sneaking around, he said evenly, I was busy protecting what was mine. You're not taking another dime. Her face paled. Mark looked at me, searching for the softness I used to offer. Elena, we can work through this. We've built too much to throw it away. I leaned forward, meeting his eyes. No, Mark. I built too much to let you ruin it. And I already filed the papers. His face crumpled, not with heartbreak, but with fear. The fear of a man realizing he'd underestimated the woman he thought would always forgive. By the time dawn lightened the horizon, the confrontation was over. Mark and Sophie left in silence, their alliance cracked under the weight of exposure. I watched them walk to their cars. Not together, not touching. Two conspirators who realized their crime didn't bind them, it destroyed them. David stood beside me on the deck, the ocean wind cold but clean. What now? He asked. Now, I said, we live. The weeks that followed were messy, lawyers, signatures, dividing property. But for the first time, I didn't feel small. I felt powerful, steady, unbroken. The beach house remained mine in the divorce. I repainted the walls a brighter blue, filled the rooms with friends and laughter. What was once a stage for betrayal became a sanctuary again, this time mine alone. David and I stayed in touch, bound not by pain but by the strange respect forged in fire. Sometimes we shared updates, sometimes silence was enough. And Mark, his reputation at the firm crumbled, whispers of scandal chasing him until even his clients pulled away. Sophie moved out of Charleston altogether, the glitter gone from her smile. Their empire of secrets collapsed because two people they underestimated refused to stay silent. Betrayal doesn't end when the truth is revealed. It lingers in quiet moments, the way you flinch when your phone buzzes, the way you doubt laughter that comes too easily. But it also teaches. I learned that revenge isn't always fire. Sometimes it's tidewater, steady, unstoppable, reshaping the shore grain by grain until the lies wash away. Mark thought the beach house was his escape. Sophie thought it was her secret paradise. But for me, it became the place I reclaimed my dignity. And when I watch the sunrise now, alone but unbroken, I whisper to myself the words that carried me through. Welcome home.